Hi, my name is Alex Linde, and I'm a solutions engineer at CyberArk. Today I'm going to walk you through the setup of the Windows Cloud Agent to provide MFA for endpoints and allow you to integrate it with Okta for MFA via Radius. This guide will focus on two main steps. First, the configuration within the Okta side, and second, the configuration within CyberArk Identity. If you don't already have an Okta account and you're just doing this for testing, you can register for an Okta developer account and we will be able to work with that. Here I have an Okta developer account that I'm going to use for my portion. The first thing that you'll do is go to Settings Downloads, and you'll need to download and install the Okta AD Agent installer. This is fairly straightforward, so I'm not going to demo this, but I will say a couple of important points. If you're using an Okta account, it's going to ask you, first of all, whether you're using a production account, and you will say yes, so you'll select production. And secondly, it'll ask you for the beginning of your Okta domain. It's important that you put in just this value over here. If you have a -admin, you will just ignore that, and the .okta.com also does not get put in there. This will allow you to get signed in and allow the AD agent to work. Once the AD agent is been installed, then you'll go under Directory Integrations, and find that Active Integration. And you'll want to do a one-time import by using the Import Now button, just to make sure you get your users in there. After that import is completed, then you'll go into People, and you'll want to make sure that the particular user you want to be testing with, in my case Jen Johnson, has been ported over and is now accessible through here. A key point is to make sure that the AD user that you're using already has an email account and has a mobile phone number already registered. This is just going to make it easier for you to configure your MFA factors and avoid MFA lockout. One important point here is that if you're a CyberArk employee and you're using the standard cyber.com domain, then your typical users, such as Mike and Paul, will not get ported over because they're already part of another Okta account. So you'll need to create another account. In this case, I've created Jen Johnson, and this one was ported over successfully. Next, you'll want to go back to your settings page, go to Downloads, scroll down, and assuming you're using a Windows machine, you download the Windows Okta Radius Server Agent. A key point here is to install it on a different machine than the one where your CyberArk Identity connector is running on. If you haven't already set up your CyberArk Identity connector, you can do so later. During the setup of the Okta Radius Server Agent, which will be relatively straightforward, you'll again need to have your Okta domain and just the very first part of it without the -admin and without the .okta.com. And then this will allow you to log in and allow the Okta Radius Server Agent to connect to your instance of Okta. The next step is to go under Applications, browse the app catalog, and search for Radius. Then you'll click the Radius application, and this is the generic Radius integration application in Okta, and then you'll click Add. I've already added mine, so I'll show you that one. There are very few settings that you'll need to take care of, but the most important ones are under this Basic Settings section. You'll need to select Okta Performs Primary Authentication, make sure that the UDP port is 1812, and type in a secret key that you're going to remember. You'll be using the same secret key for configuration in CyberArk Identity, so make sure that you write it down or remember it somehow. And finally, for the application username format, you're just going to keep Okta username. And then you'll click Save. You'll also want to make sure to enable this setting towards the bottom of the page so that the users can log in through their AD-UPN or AD-SAM account name as well. The final step of configuring this application is to assign your users to it. In this case, I only have one user, but you could assign other users to it. And basically, you just assign to people, add the user, and make sure they show up in this page. That way, this user will be able to use the application. You'll want to go to Security, Multi-Factor, and enable a number of multi-factor options. Obviously, if there is no MFA configured, then this entire process will not work. In this case, I recommend configuring the octaVerify app, turning that to active and enabling the push notification. And you can also enable SMS authentication, Google Authenticator, email, etc. Next, you'll want to sign out and you'll want to sign in with your AD user. In this case, I've already assigned a couple of applications. You don't really need to do that, but you'll go to Settings and then edit the profile. Verify your password one more time. And you may get a push notification. This is something I've already set up. If you haven't set this up, you won't have to do this. And then you'll be able to set up your octaVerify app. You'll be able to set up the Google Authenticator or email or SMS. It's important that the particular user has some working MFA factors. Again, otherwise this entire process will not work. Finally, you might want to go to the App Store on your iPhone or the Google Play Store on an Android and download the octaVerify app and set it up for this particular user. I'm not going to go through the setup process. It's very straightforward, and you can certainly find instructions on Okta's side if you have any trouble with it, but it was very easy. The final step for the Okta side is to go to the endpoint on which you have set up the Okta's Radius server and make sure that it's listening. So you'll want to go to C, Program Files x86, and you'll want to find Okta, Radius agent, and current. Now you'll want to go into the logs and take a look at the Okta Radius log, scrolling all the way to the bottom. What you want to see is something like this: info listening on port 1812. If you see an error like this one, where it failed to start the listener, then you may need to go under services and restart the service, or you may need to reboot your machine on which the Radius agent is installed, or both. To restart the services, you will click the Windows, type in Services, go to your Services desktop app, scroll down until you find the Okta Radius agent, and just hit the Restart button. And now let's talk about the CyberArk Identity setup. In CyberArk Identity, log in as administrator and go to Policies, go to the default policy. Under User Security Policies, go under Radius, and make sure that both of the options are selected as yes, and the two checkboxes are empty. Next, go under Authentication, and add a new profile, call it Computer MFA. Include some factors in Challenge 1, leaving all the checkboxes in Challenge 2 blank. The most important one is the third-party Radius authentication that will be used for integration with Okta. Click OK, and make sure it's here. Now, under Policies, Default Policy, Authentication Policies, click on Endpoint Authentication, and select Computer MFA as your default profile. What this will do is make sure that the Windows Cloud Agent uses this particular profile and therefore allows Radius as a form of authentication. If you haven't already done it, go to Downloads and install the CyberArk Identity connector on a device that's domain joined to your Active Directory controller, but ideally not the Active Directory controller itself, and definitely not the same machine on which you put the Okta Radius server agent. Once that's set up, it's going to show up under Settings Network. Click on it, go to the Radius, and make sure that you enable the Radius options. Next, we're going to go to Authentication, Radius Connections, and Servers. And we'll add a new server in here to connect to our Radius Okta server. In this case, I've already added one. You'll give it a name. Now, this is important. For the IP address, you'll want to specify the local IP address, not necessarily the public IP address, because what's happening here is that the CyberArk Identity connector is connecting directly to the Okta Radius agent. And so it needs to be the local IP. You'll specify port 1812 and the same server secret that you specified earlier in the Okta configuration for the Radius application. You'll change the timeout to 30 seconds, and the name will be the canonical name. Now, the response input label is essentially the label that we put when we ask the user for input with the Radius. However, the Radius limitation is that we can only provide a single label. We cannot provide multiple labels for multiple prompts. But there are going to be two prompts. First, one for the password, and the second one will be for the type of MFA the user wants to do. So what I've done is I said at first prompt, enter the password, and at second prompt, enter 1 for push or 2 for SMS. Next, you'll want to go to Endpoints, Global Endpoint Permissions, and add any users or user groups that will need to have access to your endpoint. After that, you go to the Download section and download and install the Windows Cloud Agent on the machine that you'd like to protect with MFA. You'll attempt to log into the device. And now we're going to attempt to sign in as Jen to the laptop where we have the Windows Client Agent installed. As you see, the authentication system asks us to select an authentication method. We'll select Radius Okta Server and put in Jen's password to start. Then we'll press enter. We'll type in 1 for push and press enter again. And then we'll receive a push to octaVerify. We'll say yes, it's me. And we'll be authenticated into Jen's laptop. Thank you very much for watching this demonstration.